Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie,
and each week we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird. Welcome back to another episode of History for Weirdos.
What's going on, weirdos? Woohoo!
We're very excited for episode number 49 for many reasons, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say, babe, but also because the next episode is our big 50th.
I know, our 50th anniversary, not anniversary episode. Every time I say 50th episode, I always want to say anniversary.
I can guarantee you there's no one who has a 50th podcasting anniversary
that is
right
true.
now. No one's been doing it for 50 years.
Maybe 50 days. But
yeah, no.
Okay, our 50 episode anniversary podcast
which
episode.
Which is a big milestone. And it's because of you all who, encourage our delusions as we sit here and talk about
some cool history or some cool history.
Weird history. So thank you very much.
And we still have, I think, a few slots open for questions. So if you have any last minute questions, throw them our way and we'll add them to the list.
Yes. And now, my love, what are you going to tell us about today?
So without further ado, let's just get into this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, today, actually, I want to talk about the story of one of the most powerful women in the history of the Roman Empire.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yes, and it's interesting because she was a Roman, but not a Roman.
Oh.
That distinction, as the Roman Empire kind of, transpires and, progresses, just gets more and more kind of muddied.
Yes.
Yeah, because it just becomes, it's a multi-ethnic, transcontinental
identity.
Yeah, identity.
Yeah.
It's very complicated, but I'll try to spruce it up and make it as clear-cut as possible.
Okay, I'm excited.
So she fostered an intellectual environment in her court, which was open to scholars, philosophers, and was tolerant of religious minorities.
Yay for tolerance.
Yeah, so she was that was pretty, unique for most rulers at the time.
I mean, tolerance was not a vibe in the ancient world.
Sometimes it was, typically not.
Typically not.
So she rebelled and became an empress in her own right.
I like her already.
Yeah. Her name was Zenobia, and she was the empress of the Palmyran Empire.
I've never heard of Zenobia or the Palmyran.
Yeah, Palmyra. It's from the city of Palmyra or Palmyra. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, it was very short-lived, so it's understandable you haven't heard of it.
Oh, I'm really intrigued.
Yeah. So even to this day, she's considered a patriotic symbol in Syria.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the region that we're in?
Yeah, so we're in, present day, Syria.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay.
So Julia Aurelia Zenobia was born and raised in Palmyra, Syria, in around 240 AD or CE.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say AD for the rest of this episode just because it's Latin and we're talking about Rome, so it kind of makes sense.
Very appropriate.
Just very cut to the chase.
What a nice attention to detail.
Right.
That I never would have noticed if you had switched back and forth or not.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't notice.
No.
So her early upbringing is pretty obscure.
Mm-hmm.
She most likely had some noble ancestry. Well, she definitely had some noble ancestry and was certainly highly educated, knowing Egyptian, Greek, Latin, Arabic, and Aramaic.
Jeez Louise.
So she was a smarty pants.
Yeah.
She claimed that she was a direct descendant of Cleopatra, but it is unknown if she meant the last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra, or the much less well-known Cleopatra Thea.
Oh.
Still a big deal, just not Cleopatra.
Right.
This also means, though, if she was directly descendant of Cleopatra, she would also have been a direct descendant of Mark Antony as well.
Very cool.
So pretty cool. She was also related to Severan dynasty rulers, not directly, but just they shared, I think she was directly descendant from either their mother or their grandfather, but she was related to Geta and Caracalla.
Those are some pretty big names.
Yeah, so some pretty big names. Again, not directly related, but tangentially related. Also, she was tangentially related probably to Hannibal as well.
Wow.
So pretty crazy stuff. Impressive lineage for sure, but this isn't about who she's related to after all. Just we're just setting the stage. So in around 255 AD, she married Septimius Odenathus of Palmyra as his second wife. She was around like 14, 15 at this time, by the way.
Do you mean second wife as in his first wife had passed, or he had two wives?
No, his first wife had passed.
Okay.
But that's a good question, though. Odenathus is an interesting figure in his own right. He essentially ruled the entire easternmost portion of the Roman Empire as a client king, ruling from the Black Sea in the north to modern-day Israel-Palestine in the south.
Wow.
So big swath of land. In fact, the Roman Senate gave him the title Corrector Totius Orientis, or governor of the entire East, after he had an impressive victory against the Persian Sassanid Empire.
They're like, you get the whole East, man.
Yeah, they're like, we clearly cannot deal. This is also, by the way, I didn't put this in the notes, but I think it's important to notice, this is during a period of Roman history called the Crisis of the 3rd Century. And it's not really one crisis, it's just 50 years of one crisis after another crisis.
So like the time we're living in now. We're going to have our own crisis after crisis.
Yeah.
Good times.
Good times. Well, anyways, while Odenathus was in campaign, Zenobia allegedly participated in campaigns along with him. It's hard to say for certain because the only primary source comes from the Historia Augusta, an ancient text that is just littered with inaccuracies.
I have been privy to Andrew's ramblings about how inaccurate this is. The Historia Augusta and how confusing it makes things.
It does. It's just, I think some guy was just winging it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
That's how I would have done it. Just to piss off someone in the future.
Right, exactly. I included this, though, because it isn't outside the realm of possibility, given how popular her future reign would be.
And when you say campaign, you mean military campaign?
Military campaign, yes. Good distinction. It's also important to mention also at this point that she had 2 sons by Odenathus, and that she was also a stepmother to one of his sons from a prior marriage.
Okay, so there's 3 young kids.
Yeah, and the oldest one is definitely probably like
her age.
Like her age.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So gross.
So gross. So here's when things really start to go down, though.
Okay.
267 AD, Odenathus and his eldest son were assassinated by a cousin of his by the name of Myonius. The reason why? Completely unknown.
What?
No idea.
The cousin didn't get something immediately out of it?
No, there was, like, according to the Historia Augusta, he briefly ruled, but most modern historians are like, nah, there's no way. Just because, like, of how quickly Zenobia was able to kind of garner support around herself.
This is nuts. So maybe it was personal.
It could have been personal. There's even, like, some people say Zenobia was behind it as well, but most people don't necessarily agree with that. Because, and the reason why is because it presented an opportunity for Zenobia. Like, her son was now technically the next in line. Her older son,
right? Because his first son died too.
Oh. Yeah, and her son by the name of Vabelothus.
That's a mouthful.
Vabelothus, yeah, terrible name. Jeez,
I see why that one went out of fashion.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and while Zenobia became the queen regent to her son.
Wow.
So she technically never ruled in her own right and ruled on behalf of her son, but she was always the one pulling the strings. Like, it was her who was ruling. And her son was just a figurehead. I mean, he was young at the time. So
I was going to say.
It makes sense.
He was probably a child. So.
Yeah. I mean, she was pretty young. I mean, if she was born in like 240, that in 267, she's like 27 years old.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that level of responsibility?
No, I really can't.
At 27 plus being a mom?
Yeah, no. No, that's some Alexander stuff right there. So her early rule was consolidating power for her and, nominally for her son. The Palmyran monarchy was brand new at this point. It was pretty much Odenathus was the only previous ruler.
Okay.
So all loyalty was really more towards Odenathus the man and not really to like Palmyra as the country or state.
Right.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
He was the only ruler. And, her first main roadblock came from the Roman high court.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just where like ancient politics and ancient law kind of just like fascinates me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because Vaballathus absolutely had legitimacy to his royal titles as they were hereditary, but he did not have any claim whatsoever to the Roman given titles, as those were not hereditary.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, they're all appointed on behalf of the emperor.
Yeah, but it's interesting that in their world the two coexisted.
Exactly, like Romans could have client kings, right?
Yeah.
Who were, they technically ruled in their own right, but ultimately on behalf of Rome and her interests.
That's such an interesting approach.
It is, yeah. I mean, that's honestly, I don't want to get into a tangent, but it's one of the reasons why Rome was as successful as it was.
Do you think this is a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of like how the papacy maintained power?
Kind of, yeah.
It's like all of these kings all over Europe are the kings, but only because the Pope says so.
Kind of, yeah.
Right? Like the Pope agrees, they're backed by the church.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a Roman tradition.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. And the papacy obviously comes from Rome.
Yeah. Wow. Some things don't change, everyone.
Some things don't change. Yes. I know. It's wild that the Catholic Church today is like, it's from Rome. Like,
it's from Rome.
Ancient Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts. Anyways, totally lost my train of thought. Where were we? Okay. Vaballathus. Yeah, again, absolute legitimacy to his royal titles, not to the Roman titles that were given to his father.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, Zenobia not only gave her son the royal title King of Kings, which dates back God knows how long.
Love it.
But that of Corrector, which first put her in the crosshairs of Rome, as that was a Roman title.
Okay.
They were not stoked on her.
And obviously, as you had stated earlier in the episode, she is someone who is politically aware because of her family, and she's well educated, so she knew what she was doing.
She knew exactly what she was doing.
Okay.
And, however, really besides this, she assumed all of the lands that her husband had ruled over without too much of a fuss. Rome was going through a lot. So, again, crisis of the 3rd century. So they were like, maybe they might not have liked her at this point, but they're like, okay, we'll deal with you because you're still like
connected to the guy that we were all excited about.
Yeah, they loved him. I mean, they gave him amazing titles. Like he oversaw other like Roman prefects and Roman governors of like smaller little provinces.
Mm-hmm.
He oversaw them all. So he was kind of like almost like a super governor /
a super governor,
yes.
like a governator.
Like a governator.
I love it.
/ king. So, a lot of her early reign was not only obviously garnering support, but fortifying the eastern border against the Persians, which, the local Roman governors didn't necessarily dislike. So they're like, yeah, that absolutely.
Right. That's what we want.
And in fact, maybe because of that, and probably because of other things, there aren't any recorded attempts of them, like the local governors at the time, trying to overthrow her, and generally accepted her and her son as the legitimate successor to Odenathus.
Okay.
In 270, though, she made her first move into expansion. Mm-hmm. She sent an army under the command of her general Septimius Zabdus to Bostra, which was the capital of the Roman province of Arabia Petraea.
Okay.
Her army absolutely routed the Roman army. Again, that's a huge feat in and of itself.
Right.
And she conquered the area of present-day Jordan and the northwestern portion of Saudi Arabia.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and this is where it gets just kind of wild. Because of these victories, Vaballathus is now considered a Roman governor and commander. So, because he assumed the titles of, I'm gonna do this and try to do this in ancient Latin. Okay, the titles of Vir Clarissimus Rex Consul Imperator Dux Romanorum.
What?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm not even gonna get. It just basically is like, the one to throw in there is there's Consul. Rex, which means king. Consul, which is just a consul.
Yeah,
dates back to like the Roman Republic. And Imperator, which that would eventually become emperor. It didn't really mean that though. In ancient times, it's just more like victorious general.
Okay,
it's like kind of the Becks. They're the best one. Dux, Dux would actually eventually become duke.
Okay, that's so interesting, like a duke.
And Romanorum, just Roman.
So this is the son gets these titles because of his mom's victories?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's so confusing, but just don't think about it too much. Just know that titles were just weird and they're wild back in the day.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So all of this, that he inherited all of this while technically still being subordinate to the emperor in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Very complicated affair.
Mm-hmm.
The coup de grace comes later, though, when Zabdas invaded Egypt and conquered it for Zenobia and, nominally for Vaballathus.
Yes.
It was particularly easy because Rome was going through a succession crisis, which took attention away from the province.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, Zenobia ruled over territory that covered the entire eastern Mediterranean coast from central Anatolia, northern Mesopotamia, the Levant, part of Arabia, the Sinai Peninsula, and now Egypt.
Wow.
So just a massive, it is an empire in its own right.
Yeah, that is an empire. Right.
It's massive. It would be absolutely massive by today's standards. There's most countries in that area aren't even nearly that big.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the high watermark of her empire. And now it's probably a good time to, maybe take a step away from her conquering.
Okay.
To speak about like her leadership style and what was going on like in just the everyday, or I guess her court.
Okay.
Maybe not the everyday lives of people. We don't really know too much, but
her everyday.
So she saw an empire of Semitic peoples, Hellenistic ones, and many other ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
She was incredibly religiously tolerant and did not really favor any sort of particular religion or cult and allowed them all to exist, including Christians and Jewish folks.
Wow.
Yeah, which was, everyone might be thinking, well, duh, but no, this time that's pretty rare.
Yeah, and Christianity at this point is seen as a cult shoot off of Judaism, right?
Yes, that's correct. It's starting to gain a lot of popularity, but still, you'll still see a lot of, later even Roman emperors still persecute Christians.
Of course, because they were weird and they liked helping sick people.
Yeah, that's weirdos.
And poor people.
So she carefully crafted and projected an image of a Syrian monarch, a Hellenistic queen, and a Roman empress. So basically kind of covering all of her bases.
Oh.
Just being like this worldly like woman. And also from a few descriptions I've seen, apparently she was also fairly attractive.
That's so interesting. When women garner a lot of power, they tend to say that. And I've seen cases like a few where that's not true. Cleopatra's a really...
Right.
This is not me trying to diss Cleopatra, you guys. Like, I swear. But just the way they describe her is so different than the images we have of her. I wonder if it's just their magnetism.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly that they're such outliers and that they're women.
Right.
That people are like, oh yeah, she's beautiful. Like they need to ascribe some sort of like
physical attribute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is so interesting. I wonder if she was.
Yeah. Apparently the modern, or not modern, sorry, the ancient descriptions of her, like around the same time, were fairly positive. So, and they went into detail about like her dark hair and like, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. I didn't write it down in my notes, but I was just like, funny.
Yeah. No, it could be totally possible. I just think it's interesting that that's always the case.
Right.
And it's not always the truth.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So where was I? Oh yeah. So she's, again, like I mentioned earlier, she surrounded herself with intellectuals and philosophers at court, further maintaining that image, very carefully crafted image of an enlightened monarch loved by the people.
Yes. It sounds like she's very strategic.
She was very strategic. And generally speaking, it seems like that was the case. So in fact, Palmyra was becoming the biggest thought capital in the Mediterranean, even supplanting Athens for a very brief period of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And that like Palmyra being so new and Athens being so old.
Right, exactly. Athens was incredibly old by this point. However, all good things must come to an end. Oh, yes. And so remember that ascension crisis that Rome was having earlier on?
Yeah.
So, that's coming to a close now.
Okay.
And the winner of that little civil war was a Roman general by the name of Aurelianus, or just simply Aurelian.
Oh, the dude that likes walls?
Yes, the Aurelian walls. So, this is the perfect...
Sorry, not likes walls in like the Trump Mexico border away.
No,
I was making a joke about the Aurelian Wall.
Yeah, it's a nerd joke.
Very beautiful. I've seen it in person.
And still stands to this day.
And still stands to this day.
So, and this is just a perfect example in history where an exceptional leader like Zenobia, no matter what she does, is still just eclipsed by someone possibly even more brilliant.
Wow.
Which is just, you see this a few times in history. Another one that comes to mind is like Pompey Magnus.
Yeah.
But being eclipsed by Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
And there's one in Mesopotamian history. I don't even remember the guy's name, but he's eclipsed by Hammurabi.
That's so interesting when that happens to like, you're still so amazing and so exceptional.
Right.
But someone else is going to still supplant you.
Exactly.
That sucks so much.
Like, it's crazy because you get to a point. Lugal Legazi. That's a great name.
Of course. You didn't just make that up on the spot.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, Lugal in ancient Sumerian means king.
Oh.
Fun fact of the day. Oh, yeah.
There you go, Weirdos. Fun fact of the day.
Now you can say you know at least one word in ancient Sumerian.
Yes.
History of Weirdos podcast. You're welcome.
There you go.
So yeah, Lugal Legazi being supplanted by Sargon the Great. Okay, anyways, I'm done with examples like that. Just know that this is it's just a crazy time.
And what are the odds that someone would be able to, like you said, eclipse her?
Right. And guys, just to give you an idea of how great like everyone thought Aurelian was. Mm-hmm. His title given to him by the Roman Senate, so not to himself, by the Roman Senate, was Restitutor Orbis, meaning restorer of the world.
Wow.
So, I mean, they had a high opinion of him. Let's just say that.
He was Mr. Popular.
Yes. So in 270 and 271, Zenobia was minting coins with her son and Aurelian. Okay. So her son on one side, Aurelian on the other.
Okay.
Deferring to Aurelian as the senior leader. However, that eventually stopped, and in late 271, coins were minted with her son being hailed as Augustus or emperor. That's basically just going into full-blown revolt. Yeah. Like, that's saying, oh yeah, like, at best, for Aurelian, it's like, oh, her son is on equal footing, which is, for someone like Aurelian, that's a big no-no. Yeah. So this was the beginning of the end for Zenobia. Aurelian marched through Asia Minor, present-day Turkey, and fought a series of battles against Zenobia's forces. Zenobia, meanwhile, marched all of her troops from Egypt all the way, north to northern Syria, the heartland of Palmyra, because if Palmyra falls, everything falls. Right, or Syria falls, everything falls. Aurelian fought an army led by Zabdas, who had previously been undefeated at this point. Zabdas' army, however, was routed at the Battle of Emei in May of 272. Mm-hmm. He fought a 70,000, he, as an Aurelian, later fought a 70,000 strong army led by Zenobia herself at the Battle of Emesa, either in the same month or in the next month in June. They nearly even routed the Romans at this point, but were ultimately unsuccessful. Wow, that's insane. And the Roman army around this time had only about 50,000, I'd say. And Zenobia's had 70? Yes. I mean, that also just goes to show that, Aurelian was probably one of the most brilliant and underrated military leaders of like that kind of that all of probably classical and late antiquity. Mm-hmm. I guess he's more late antiquity, but still. Zenobia, after the battle, fled to her capital city of Palmyra, and for a short time waited out a siege by the Roman army. Mm-hmm. She eventually decided to flee under the cover of darkness towards Persia, her former hated enemy. What? Yeah, at this point, it's like, what else? What has she got to lose? However, Aurelian learned of this plan, and a contingent of his army eventually caught up with her before she could cross the Euphrates into Persian territory. She must have been really scared to be caught. Yeah, I think so. At this point, there are like a half dozen different stories as to what happened to her. The most likely, though, is that she probably had to endure some sort of series of humiliations, including dressing her up as a camel. What? Yeah, I guess that was a big diss back in the day. To be a camel? To be a camel. I don't know, man. Camels are pretty cool. This woman was a queen. Now she has to dress up as a camel. That's such a weird punishment, but okay. I literally put in my notes, I don't know, guys. The ancient world was weird. Yes. We did know that she was almost certainly present at Aurelian's triumph in Rome around 274 and was paraded about.
Oh.
After this point, though, nothing is known for certain. Some accounts say she was just beheaded, but others say she lived on in obscurity. The Historia Augusta, and remember, take this with a grain of salt, says that Aurelian actually gave her a villa near Hadrian's villa in present-day Tivoli, Italy, where she lived out the rest of her days. In fact, according to this account, her house would eventually become a tourist attraction for Romans. And I do like this account, to be honest. That's my favorite one.
I mean, after enduring so much humiliation, being someone who was so incredible, an amazing ruler, and then to be subjugated to humiliation, you'd hope that she at least got a really nice villa somewhere.
Right. And it's next to Hadrian's villa. So it's beautiful little area.
Yeah, but she was probably beheaded, babe.
Yeah, no, I refuse to believe it. I refuse.
But on the other hand, she does seem to be, just like I said, extremely magnetic and smart and strategic. I'd imagine charming for so many men of her time to rally around her. Maybe she did talk her way into a villa. It's
very possible. I like to think that she did. And I didn't put this in my notes because it's not really directly related to Zenobia, but eventually, so Palmyra was spared during her rebellion.
Okay.
However, they revolted again.
Ooh.
And then Aurelian destroyed the city. And it never really got back to prominence ever again.
Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah. And and a lot of it was in remembrance of Zenobia, her.
That's why they revolted again?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh, I'm thinking she's dead then.
No!
Because then if she were not deceased at that point, he would have removed her from this planet. Is a nice way to say it.
No.
After, right? Because maybe they still had hope.
Right.
Or that's why they rebelled again. That's really interesting, though. After everything, to be spared and to be like, phew, okay.
Right.
We survived that one, to still try to fight against them.
I know. It's crazy.
That's fascinating.
Her legacy is very divided. And I find that actually really fascinating. So in some context, she's seen as a feminist icon, a national hero, and a woman of the people. Whereas other valuations of her are far more critical, calling her a power-hungry warmonger.
So calling her a man.
So, and again, according to few sources, she was very attracted, just adding to the overall mysticism and romantic outlook of Zenobia.
Yes, she's quite a romantic figure.
Yeah, and again, if it wasn't for Aurelian, who was just absolutely magnetic and just an icon in his own right, she would probably her story would be probably very different than what actually happened. So let me ask you a question.
Yes, please.
What do you think of her legacy?
I think she's a badass.
You think she's a badass?
That's really amazing. I think I'm just confused, though, as to why, with things going so well for her, even with Aurelian on the scene, why she would do the thing of minting the coins with her son.
Yeah, see, I don't know. That I think it was really dumb.
Yeah, that does seem dumb.
She should have just, maybe, she just didn't understand how competent Aurelian would be, because she did see a bunch of Roman emperors kind of come and go very quickly. One of those Roman emperors, it was before Odenathus died. He fought against Persia it was humiliating for him because he was captured by the Persians. So, and he had to live out the rest of his life as a prisoner.
Oh, so she saw, you're right, it was a time of crisis, it was very tumultuous. She's like, this dude, maybe she was thinking, this dude's not going to last. Right,
and, she probably thought that, Rome was just going to absolutely disintegrate, right, and, it wouldn't last, and, well, if it wasn't for, just some extraordinary people, it probably would have.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And, weirdos, I want to know, what do you guys think of her legacy? Is she a national hero icon, or is she a warmonger? Let us know. Yeah.
A warmonger.
Or a warmonger. I mean, here's what I think. I'll tell you what I think.
Oh, yes,
I don't think she's a warmonger. I think she's very, right for her time. I think, you know, I mean, look, we even look back at like people like Genghis Khan, who was absolutely like a genocidal warmonger.
Yes.
And like and he never has like a really negative opinion about him. No. Unless you really understand history.
Right, but like the broad strokes is like, wow, like amazing, big figure. Conqueror.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, like because of him, God knows how many people died. But like one of the biggest mass murders in all of history. But anyways, I don't think she's a warmonger. I think she's pretty dope. But again, Aurelian's also my favorite emperor, so it's kind of just like a weird like standoff where I'm like, I really admire both of you guys.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So you think she's seen unfairly critically in some cases? I think so. Okay.
Yeah. I think overall, I actually have a pretty high opinion of her.
I mean, I'm floored that she was able to do all of this.
Yeah. Again, she did a lot in such a short amount of time.
And especially like, obviously very smart and everything like that and well educated, but women, I'd imagine, weren't educated or socialized to take those types of military positions of power like a lot of young men were, right? They're expected to have good military knowledge, even lower class people, right? Because all the men went into the military in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
But this is incredible to me that she like led an army of 70,000 and almost beat Aurelian.
Yeah.
That's so impressive.
It's incredibly impressive. Well, weirdos, that's all. Let us know what you guys think of her legacy. In the meantime, I'll give you my sources. We have the Historia Augusta.
A very reliable source.
Very reliable.
Use it on your thesis.
Yeah, definitely. Every single word of it is 100% correct. I also used ThoughtCo, Encyclopedia Britannica, Nat Geo, worldhistory.org, the New World Cyclopedia, and, of course, our favorite, Wikipedia.
Awesome, babe. I really loved that. That was so interesting. This was like a really fascinating chunk of history that I've never heard of, and I'm so surprised there's not like a movie or something.
I know. There really should be more media about her. I'm very shocked that there isn't. I mean, to be honest, this entire period, I mean, this is like really like the time where, classical antiquity ends and late antiquity begins. Like there's not really so much a specific year. It's more of just like a phasing in and out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And maybe, yeah. And it's just a really transformative time for the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia, Iran, even like the Parthian Empire falls and the Sassanid Empire replaces it. It's a big thing.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, enough of my rambling. I love you guys, and we'll see you next time for our 50th anniversary.
50th.
I said that on purpose that time.
Oh my.
I said that on purpose that time. Our 50th episode, guys.
Goodbye, weirdos.
Adios.